it's horse beef. What is going on, everybody? I want to talk about the most anticipated fight of the year. I think probably for everybody, right? JDM versus Islam Makhachev. We're about a week away from it. It's just crazy to think that we're already in November. This year has flown by. It's fucking wild, man. But we're almost there. The biggest fight of the year, the best fight of the year in my opinion. This fight honestly does have fight of the year written all over it. As long as it goes past like 3 rounds, this fight could 100% turn into an even better version of Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev the first time around, right? When Volkanovski was actually like prepared for the fight and shit. So yeah, I'm gonna give you guys my prediction for what these script writers have in store for us here. And I think Islam Makhachev's in big trouble here. I really do. I understand Islam is incredible, right? He's arguably the best fighter in the world, skill for skill. The man can do it all. He's a very decent striker, although a little bit basic in that regard. I think he's given a little bit too much credit for his striking pedigree. He's not an elite striker in my personal opinion, of course. But as far as grappling goes, there may not be a single fighter who you would least want on top of you than Islam Makhachev. He is a complete fucking anaconda on the ground, and that's the way I see him winning this fight. If he wins this fight whatsoever, I believe it would be a submission in the first couple of rounds here, which is very possible, of course, because as I said, Islam is elite. He may be the best grappler in the UFC as things currently stand, and there's stiff competition there. Islam also offers a different dimension when it comes to the grappling that Belal Muhammad doesn't really possess. Inside the clinch, Islam Makhachev possesses a variety of different judo throws. He's incredibly high level with that, and he's just more of a cerebral grappler than Belal, right? So JDM will not be able to scramble in the same way he did against Belal, because he will be giving up his neck potentially for a Dars to get snapped up. Because, dude, as I said, Islam is a fucking anaconda. The man is a crocodile with how he snaps up submissions at times. So JDM will have to watch out. He cannot scramble as rapidly as he did with Belal. So it is tough to make that direct comparison between Islam Makhachev and Belal Muhammad, right? To say that, well, JDM did very well dealing with Belal Muhammad's takedown attempts, so clearly he'll be able to do the same with Islam. It's not exactly the same thing. Islam, like, technique for technique, is the far superior grappler to Belal Muhammad. He may not be as physically strong. We're not really sure how strong he'll be at 170, right? Based on some clips that are floating around. He's looking pretty juicy, man. He's looking pretty fucking thick. Like he looks like he's filled out. He looks very healthy. He looks very, very good right now. He does, and he looks like he may not be giving up too much size at 170, but that could still play a huge factor because Islam Makhachev is not used to fighting with that extra mass on him. So even though I think it could help his chin, I actually believe that he could potentially be more durable at 170. I fear for his gas tank a bit, especially if Islam realizes early on that he is not nearly as imposing physically at 170 as he was at 155, because like, this isn't any way to try and take away from Khabib and his team, right? But I feel like fighters like Khabib and Islam Makhachev rely a lot on being physically imposing in there, and we've seen that if fighters are able to fight off the takedowns from Islam and deal with them on the ground and not get submitted early, you can really give him some problems, man. Dustin Poirier, for example. Dustin Poirier has legitimately like no hips. He has non-existent hips, and he was doing quite well on the ground with Islam, dealing with the takedown attempts and getting up when he was taken down. He even had his back taken by Islam and remained very safe. But then again, Islam is so elite with his technique that even if you are able to drag him into deep waters, he was still able to find that Dars, man. One of the most beautiful submissions I've ever seen, to be honest. Honestly, dude, Islam, like I say, gets all the credit in the world for how elite he is at grappling. And even though Dustin Poirier is a legend, is one of my favorite fighters of all time, I do honestly think that JDM, he sort of comes across as an upgraded version of Dustin Poirier, right? Better hands, in my opinion. Even better hands. In my personal opinion, better boxing fundamentals. Extremely underrated kicking game, right? Elbows in the pocket. Knees, right? Slipping shots and landing knees, breaking orbital bones with fucking knees, dude. He also happens to be one of the most prolific body punchers we've ever seen. Great use of high guard. He showed against Belal, improved head movement as well. He'd even drop his level and sort of use his forehead to fight off takedowns, although I would worry about him against Islam, right? Doing that too often may result in him eating a knee up the middle. But then again, JDM is just a hard-nosed brawler. Hard-nosed brawler, not in the literal sense. The man has the softest nose I've ever seen. He doesn't have any fucking cartilage in his nose, I don't believe. That thing is smashed into his face. And he seems to not mind getting hit whatsoever. And I think that's what gives him such an advantage over all of his opponents, really, is he kind of has that Yuri Prochazka factor for me. He kind of does. I know he doesn't fight as wild as Yuri Prochazka, but he has that Yuri Prochazka factor in the sense that he's never out of the fight. Like, I know people like to harp so much on the fact that he was taken down by Gilbert Burns, even though his arm was snapped in like the first round, right? His arm was snapped, and like I understand injury excuses, whatever, but you would have to assume that would affect your ability to not only fight off takedowns, but get up. But even then, he was still able to stay exceptionally safe against Gilbert Burns, who is one of the most prolific Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in the UFC, right? Fighters like Khamzat Chimaev didn't even want to hang with him on the fucking ground, right? He didn't even want to test him. That's just say a lot. And JDM was not only able to stay safe, but in crunch time, scramble back to his feet and land the necessary shots. And that's the thing with JDM, man. He's never out of the fight, and he's always looking to finish. Always. And I think the guy needs to get more credit for his performance against Belal. He really does. Like, just look at Belal Muhammad's resume leading up to that fight. He was taking out everybody, and he was looking impressive in the process, right? Many of his wins aged so well, dude. Look at his finish over Sean Brady, and look how Sean Brady's looked since then. Like, Belal Muhammad is no joke, and everybody and their mothers leading up to that fight was picking Belal Muhammad very confidently, acting like JDM had no chance going into it. JDM then does the exact opposite of what everyone thought and pieced up Belal Muhammad for 5 rounds, yet people don't want to give him credit because, according to them, Belal Muhammad did not fight with the correct game plan. He didn't shoot enough takedowns, apparently. So I went back and looked at some past Belal Muhammad fights, right? The takedown stats, and it seems pretty average for Belal Muhammad to shoot about 9 takedowns, right? Against Vicente Luque the second time around, shot 10. Against Wonderboy Thompson, right? He shot 9. That's against Wonderboy Thompson. Of all people. Against Leon Edwards, yes, he did shoot more, right? 13 takedown attempts against Leon. And against Jack Della Maddalena, 9 takedown attempts. So I would say that the amount of takedown attempts that Belal Muhammad shot against Jack Della Maddalena falls very much within his average. And that's without me even going and cherry picking fights where he shot 0 takedowns, like against Sean Brady and against Gilbert Burns, right? So clearly there's something that JDM was doing in there that was troubling Belal Muhammad more than any of his past opponents. And I think that has to do with, number one, the elite footwork that JDM came in there with. Also, a complete unwillingness to give up ground and showed no respect for the takedown threat. And that's what I loved so much about JDM's performance. And that's the blueprint, right? That's how you defeat predominant grapplers, right? Fighters who rely on bringing you to the ground to get it done. You cannot respect the takedown threat. You have too much respect for the takedown threat. Suddenly, you're frozen up and you're throwing no volume. JDM, off the back foot, while switching stances, while circling off, was landing long-winded combinations on Belal and taking every single opportunity to put damage on Belal. And honestly looked like a world beater on the night, if I'm being real. I know he had a swollen eye, but dude, who's doing that to Belal? Who's doing that to anybody? The way that JDM fought for 5 rounds, who else is doing that in the UFC? Right, he looked like a completely different fighter than we had seen in the past. That's why I say, going back and looking at his performance against Basil Hafez, right, it won't work. Or Kevin Holland or Gilbert Burns, that doesn't work because he just went out there and beat Belal Muhammad. So how he looked against Kevin Holland is irrelevant. How he looked against Basil Hafez, where he had to cut weight multiple times, is irrelevant. How he looked against Gilbert Burns with his snapped arm, which, you know, he also won, by the way, is irrelevant. How did he look against Belal Muhammad, the champion, who was apparently going to reign for a long time according to all of his stands out there? How did he look against Belal? He looked amazing. Footwork, incredibly effective, fighting out of both stances, head movement, takedown defense, scrambling ability. I mean, you could take it from Craig Jones himself.
How do you think the fight against Islam goes?
I think it's a super difficult fight for Islam, this one. He's like... obviously, he's faced Volk twice. We'll forget about the second one, but the first one, very competitive with the grappling. And now we're talking about he's facing a guy that's some of the best scrambling ability, I think, period, in all of MMA, and some of the most unorthodox grappling. And I think that's what Belal struggled with. Belal really just sticks to a blueprint. The blueprint obviously works very well. But in terms of creativity in what Belal does, I think it's pretty strict. Jack, as you saw in that fight, some of his off balances and grip breaks and some of the things he does, it's really hard to prepare for that.
Now, obviously, you would expect him to be biased towards his guys, right? Of course. I'm not saying that just because Craig Jones is saying it, that means that JDM wins this fight 100% because Craig Jones is saying it. No. But, however, Craig Jones worked extensively with Volkanovski leading up to the first fight against Islam Makhachev, and we saw how well he dealt with the grappling. And we also saw the way JDM dealt with Belal when nobody thought that he would be able to, or at least very few people thought that he would be able to deal with him to that extent. Now he's had even more time to work with Craig Jones. Clearly, Craig Jones has the recipe. And you could say, well, how about Volkanovski versus Islam? You fucking nerd. Yes, he knocked him out with a head kick, right? That has everything to do with Craig Jones. Yes, 100%. Unless, of course, you're backing Islam Makhachev to knock out JDM, which I personally just don't even see as a realistic outcome here. Yes, Islam Makhachev is a bit dangerous, but knocking out JDM, very doubtful there. I just don't see Islam winning. I'm not saying that this isn't close to a 50-50, because it really is on paper. But there are more unknowns going into this one for Islam than there are for JDM, and I feel like people are acting like we've already seen Islam perform at 170. I get that he's very good, but this particular jump from 155 up to 170, it's like, I'm not saying it's completely uncharted territory, but it's somewhat uncharted. Like, we don't really see this particular weight jump very often. And I believe we'll see that there's a good reason for that. And I'm not confident in JDM just because he's a big guy and because he's bigger than Islam. No, it has nothing to do with size. I really do think that JDM just has the recipe. Even look at some of Islam's tendencies to reach in and like hold on to the tie clinch when he's looking for a break in there, dude. Look at how Dustin Poirier was digging those shots to the body. Imagine JDM doing such a thing to you. Imagine you're fading and JDM is ripping those body shots. He's so much more prolific of a body puncher than someone like a Dustin Poirier, dude. And he appears to have bricks in his hands. I get he's not a one-punch knockout guy, but look at the damage he puts on dudes. Look at fucking Belal's face after that fight. JDM has bricks in his hands. He'll slice you up with elbows. He'll break your face with knees. He's just a dangerous man. And I get Islam is too, but I think JDM will be too much for him on the night. I do think so, as things currently stand, and I'll think more about it as we get closer to the fight, and I will do my full card predictions early next week. As it stands right now, I just am not seeing how Islam gets it done against JDM. I'm not seeing it right now. Am I being biased? Sure, maybe, right? JDM is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I followed him very closely since he made his debut, since I saw his fight on the Contender Series, right? The boxing, it's just very aesthetically pleasing. But since then, the leaps and bounds that he's made as far as improvements in his overall game, it's hard to assume that he isn't going to look even better against Islam. While I feel like we've seen Islam plateau as far as his improvements have gone. When I look back at some of those sequences between Dustin Poirier and Islam Makhachev, and I put JDM in Dustin Poirier's position, I see JDM just being so much more dangerous in those moments, picking his shots even better, and just landing higher volume and doing more damage. And I don't think that Islam can match JDM as far as durability. I don't think he's durable enough to deal with JDM over the course of 5 rounds. So that's why I say that if we're going to see Islam win this, it will be a submission in the first couple of rounds. If not, JDM will win this one. I'm not sure if I'm picking decision or finish. I could see him winning anyway here. Aside from submission, really, that would be the biggest shock of all. Like, maybe that Craig Jones training really does come into play and he gets the surprise submission victory against Islam. Imagine that result. That would be one of the craziest results of all time, in all honesty. It really would. But for me, JDM, more paths to victory. Islam Makhachev, an incredible, worthy competitor, title challenger, and this one should be a fight for the ages. And I hope that this one goes all the way, because I would love to see 5 rounds of action between these two warriors. It'll be amazing. I'm in no way counting out Islam here, but as things stand, yes, I am picking JDM, and if you have a problem with that, you can go cry about it. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.